It sounds, frankly, like a nightmare. A group of extremists bent on atrocities is now openly and officially targeting Christians in Iraq. What's going on?
This is truly a living nightmare that's not going away. Christianity in Mosul is dead, and a Christian Holocaust is in our midst. 7 weeks ago, we went to Washington, D.C., and we actually were calling this a Christian genocide. And since then, day by day, it's getting worse and worse. More children are being beheaded. Mothers are being raped and killed. The fathers are being hung. But right now, 300,000 Christians are in Iraq, fleeing, living in neighboring cities, just wanting a chance not just to survive, but to live.
I want to go back, forgive me for interrupting, I want to go back to something you said, because the atrocities committed by ISIS are well known, but still you're startling me with the severity of what you're describing. You say they are beheading children?
They are systematically beheading children and mothers and fathers. The world hasn't seen an evil like this for generations. There's actually a park in Mosul that they've actually beheaded children and put their heads on a stick, and they have them in the park. This is crimes against humanity.
But ISIS doesn't care, because they have a kind of apocalyptic view of what they are doing. They truly believe that the end times are here, that they are part of a cosmic struggle between good and evil, and they're the good guys. This is arguably the most successful terrorist group in history in terms of recruitment and land that it controls. But their worldview is that they are leading the fight to bring true Islam to the Muslim world.
This is crimes against humanity, and they're doing the most horrendous, the most heartbreaking crimes you could think of.
Now, I want to ask you specifically about what happened in Mosul, because it was widely reported that when ISIS took control of Mosul, which, depending on how you do the numbers, is the second largest city in Iraq, they gave Christians an ultimatum, which would be to convert to Islam, to pay a fine, or in their phrase, death by the sword. It's very clear they are killing people, but are Christians managing to escape by paying a fine? Are the ones who cooperate at least assured of any safety?
Sure. So the letter that they sent out with those 3 items, they did ask to pay a fine, but they're actually, after they pay a fine, they're actually taking over their wives and their daughters and making them into their wives. So really it's convert or die, face death by the sword. Christians, 95% of all Christians in Mosul have fled, and 5% have converted. They've marked the red death stamp of ISIS on Christian homes, and basically saying, we know who you are, and if you come back, you will get killed.
This is almost, I'm going to ask you, forgive me for interrupting, this is almost a kind of a plague out of biblical times. They're literally marking the doors of Christian homes?
They are, and with the historian, with the letter N, to mark them as Christians. And that's why we're saying this is a Christian Holocaust within our midst, and the world community cannot turn a blind eye on something so tragic. So much of crimes are coming out. Children are being beheaded. Folks are being killed just because they're being Christian. It's happening right now.
Once again, acknowledging the atrocities of the crimes that have been committed by ISIS. Genocide is a very powerful word. Do you literally think that ISIS is trying to kill all of the Christians who fall in its hands?
They're absolutely killing every Christian they see. This is a genocide in every sense of the word. And they want everyone to convert, and they want Sharia law to be the law of the land. And we're talking about a place where Christianity was founded over 1,800 years ago. They bombed the church last week. That was an 1,800-year-old church. And they're systematically destroying churches. They've already bombed 6 churches in the area.
And no one stopped them. Mark Arabo, speaking on behalf of the Christians of Iraq. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Okay, with your expertise and experience, why do they go after the Christians?
Well, look, in addition to fighting sort of a military campaign, ISIS has a really apocalyptic view of things. I mean, they look at this as the end of times. And so this is not just a battle. They're not just carving out a territory. The world is effectively coming to an end. Islam is going to triumph, and everybody else is going to be annihilated. So when you really get down to the core of it, that's actually the way they think.
Well, the terrorists of ISIS now digging in after some big gains in Syria and Iraq. Among the conquests, the Syrian city of Palmyra and its ancient ruins. Islamic State fighters rolled through the town, sparking a desperate radio message from one government soldier. "We're finished," it said. Across the border in Iraq, the extremists recaptured the strategic city of Ramadi in Anbar province.
I mean, I've said this to leaders both in the Islamic and Arab world and to the world in general. This is a third world war by other means.
Half of Syria has fallen under the control of Islamic State, according to a UK-based human rights group. Well, their latest gain is the UNESCO World Heritage Site near the town of Palmyra, which is likely to be demolished by the jihadists. They're reportedly holding sway over almost 100,000 square kilometres. Islamic State is known to be taking advantage of American-made weapons that were left behind by government forces.
In Baghdad, Iraqi Foreign Minister Ibrahim al-Jafari told his visiting Austrian counterpart that the fight against Islamic State is effectively World War III and that all the world's major capitals are under threat.
Economic markets, schools, and all sorts of places frequented by human beings are under threat. Therefore, this is a world war. I believe the main concern for Western countries, and the European Union in particular, is to prepare for this danger, since the danger has already begun in some of the European capitals.
And, you know, Syria and Iraq, of course, are major targets, but you say there's actually another country that's the major target here. What is it?
Yeah, the major target is and always has been Saudi Arabia. It was Osama bin Laden's major target, is the near enemy. And the reason that we now have this fight going on is not just a Sunni-Shia civil war within Islam, but there is a civil war on the Sunni side, and that is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who's the head of ISIS. He is saying that only his part of the ideology is pure, and the rest of it, the Wahhabi in Saudi Arabia, have become too close to the government there, therefore they're illegitimate. And the key is, who are the true believers who will control Mecca and Medina? And of course, Mecca and Medina sit in Saudi Arabia.
Being president is never easy. I still have to fix a broken immigration system, issue veto threats, negotiate with Iran, all while finding time to pray 5 times a day.
Saudi Arabia is apparently prepared to allow Israeli jets into its airspace to conduct attacks on Iran. That's according to a report by the Israeli Channel 2 TV station, citing an unnamed senior European source. The move will allow Israel to bomb targets in Iran and avoid a lengthy detour around the Persian Gulf. The report highlighted the close collaboration and shared intelligence between Israel and Saudi Arabia over Iran's controversial nuclear program. Both countries are worried Tehran is close to developing an atomic bomb.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered to lift the ban on the delivery of the S-300 missile systems to Iran. Putin's order will become effective upon his signature. Reports say the delivery of the S-300 systems could be completed in a few months to a year, depending on the model. Israel and the United States were quick to criticize Russia over the decision. Tel Aviv says it will put Israel in danger. Iran had purchased a sophisticated defense mechanism at $800 million in 2007, but Russia failed to deliver it until 2010, when the UN Security Council banned selling arms to Iran. Now the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, says that the S-300 is a defense system and does not fall within the sanctions on sales of arms to Iran.
You all know the stories of the Iron Dome. What you may not know is that next year we will deliver to Israel the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, our finest, making Israel the only country in the Middle East with a 5th-generation aircraft. No other.
U.S. Vice President Joe Biden says Washington will deliver new fighter jets to Israel next year. Biden described the F-35 warplanes as, quote, the finest U.S. aircraft which will help Israel maintain its military edge in the Middle East. Based on contracts signed in 2010 and this year, Tel Aviv will receive a total of 33 F-35 fighter jets, making it the only possessor of them in the region. This for more than $5.7 billion. The first 2 planes are due to land in Israel by the end of next year. Israel is a major purchaser and user of the U.S. military equipment. Washington has been strongly criticized over the issue.
Saudi Arabia is reportedly seeking to purchase nuclear weapons from Pakistan. The Sunday Times has quoted a former U.S. defense official as saying that Riyadh has made the strategic decision after an agreement with Islamabad. Another U.S. intelligence official told the paper that the CIA was working to find out whether Pakistan has already supplied the Arab kingdom with nuclear technology or weaponry. The official said there is an assumption that Saudis have decided to become a nuclear power. Reports indicate that Riyadh has financed substantial amounts of Islamabad's nuclear program over the past 3 decades. The kingdom has provided the Pakistani government with billions of dollars of subsidized oil while taking delivery of the Shaheen mobile ballistic missile. Meanwhile, a senior British military officer has raised concerns that Turkey and Egypt may feel compelled to seek nuclear weapons as well.
He's not going to be able to ease the concerns, as you said at the introduction. You know, this was announced, the summit that we're having right now, when the Iranian nuclear framework deal was struck. So he immediately knew when he struck that deal that the Gulf states would have a problem with it. He already knew the Israelis would have a problem. Isn't it odd that our strong allies in the regions are the ones who are objecting vehemently to this nuclear deal? He will not ease their concerns, Jenna. They're going to walk out of here knowing that U.S. policy is increasing their risk in the region, and therefore they will have to act on their own. And that means increasing their capability to a nuclear threshold like we're leaving Iran, and nuclear proliferation in the region. And they know that's inherently dangerous. These are not stupid people. They know this is a volatile region that could lead to the first nuclear exchange in the history of the universe. They don't want any part of that. But they know also that the United States is not going to change this lousy deal that we're signing up.
In Sweden, which does not usually report the nationality of rapists, a just-released study by Swedish police revealed that Muslim men, who constitute only 2% of the population, are responsible for 77.6% of rapes, giving once peaceful Sweden the highest rape rate in Europe.
Entire parks and public spaces have basically been transformed into vast, unofficial migrant camps full of large rubbish dumps. Apart from everything else, the smell of this trash everywhere is absolutely overpowering.
There's lots of disease in these camps, and I'm scared for our children around here.
It had been 40 minutes since the concert began. There were a lot of people in the room. It was almost full and in the middle of a song. We heard detonations coming from behind and heard screams.
A sea of flowers after the horror. On Friday night, La Belle Équipe was packed. When gunmen opened fire, 19 people were killed.
I'm in Times Square, where security has been beefed up in the wake of the terror attacks in Paris. Now people here and around the country are on edge, wondering if an attack could be imminent on our shores.
They're telling us they're going to do this. Of course it's credible. And anybody that thinks it's not, look at Paris. They tell us on a daily basis they're coming. Every single day we get warnings. Every day they tell us they're going to do this. If you don't know they're coming by now, you're a moron.
As we struck France in the center of its abode in Paris, they say, then we swear that we will strike America at its center in Washington.
When
you want to talk about the treatment of women and homosexuals and free thinkers and public intellectuals in the Muslim world, I would argue that liberals have failed us. The crucial point of confusion is that we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
It says that we mustn't ever use the word Islam in any sentence that includes the words violation of human rights. This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing, you will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion.
Police and Islamic protesters have been injured as anger over an anti-Muslim film spreads to Australian streets.
Just behind me in front of the US consulate. It's now been said that a text message was sent out which saw this rally come together in the heart of Sydney. The text message read, "We must defend the honour of our prophet. We must act now."
Just voicing our opinion. Yes. That's the least we can do.
You cannot mock the greatest, most influential human being that ever walked the face of this earth.
Police rushed in reinforcements, while some in the crowd tried to calm the rest and failed.
Onlar hepsinin canı cehenneme. Böyle Allah'a inanmayan
hayvan abi onlar, insan değil.
Nasıl yani? İnsan abi. Nasıl hayvan?
Öyle insan olmaz abi. Yani bizim gibi insanlar değil onlar.
Allah belalarını versin. Yakaladığım yerde tek tek onları şırıngayla kan alırım onlardan. Taktım mı arkadan çıkar. Ya ben şimdi bakayım abi, ateş işte. Allah peygamberine inanmıyor işte.
Oğlum inanmıyor ama bir şey anlatmaz mıyız ona yani? Anlatalım. Gidelim İslam'ı anlatalım ona.
Abi işte verelim, onlar da gırtlakla kessinler.
Bristen på så kallat utländska svenskar i SSU och partiet som ett problem, utan att vi, den vita majoriteten, är så många. Och det är vi som måste förstå att vi är problemet och vi måste förändra vårt sätt att vara.
In December, an Iraqi-born immigrant tried to plant bombs at a Swedish street mall. Luckily, his bombs malfunctioned. He only blew up himself and his car. Then, at the end of the month, Sweden and Denmark arrested 5 Islamist militants and accused them of planning additional terrorist attacks.
In 5 days, the whole discourse of the whole country changed. You know, we were in a state of denial. Every time we talked about the threat, people were charging with stigmatization, with Islamophobia. Now, it changed.
Critics say immigrants cluster together, refuse to learn Swedish, and live off the country's welfare.
And I assume, are you an American? You're an American citizen. So as an American citizen, you sat in this room and instead of standing up and saying a question or asking something about our 4 Americans that died and what our government is doing to correct the problem, you stood there to make a point about peaceful, moderate Muslims. I wish you brought 10 with you to question about how we can hold our government responsible. It is time we take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs and start calling it
مذيعة بوصف مجتمع السعودي بأنه يعني يتعرض إلى غسيل دماء، وهذا شيء غير مستغرب بتاتا يا أستاذ وليد أو دكتور وليد، طالما أننا منذ سن 7 تقريبا أو 6 في سن حياتنا المدرسية الأول الابتدائي وحتى الثانوية العامة، ثالث ثانوي، عندما نبلغ 18 عاما، وحتى بعد أن ندخل الجامعة ونحن نتلقى ونتلقى ونتلقى ونحفظ ونحفظ ونحفظ، ومن يجرؤ منا ويناقش ويسأل أو يتساءل يوصم باستغفر الله، عليك أن تستغفر الله، قد الآن تقوم بما يدخلك جهنم وأنتم من تخوفون الناس بجهنم فجلبتموها لهم على الأرض، جلبتم الجحيم للناس.
The world is watching. We have gathered here tonight to commit ourselves to these global goals, to build a future in which shelter.
This is the most beautiful thing. We all about love and unity. Tomorrowland, showing your flag, representing your country. We are one.
Been coming here to see that the world is not such a bad place after all. That there will always be a place and time where we, people from all over the world with different cultures and religions, can all come together.
Hey, what's up everybody? We've got a doozy for you guys today. The images that you guys are seeing right now were sent in to us by a source named Walter C. Lenz of El Paso, Texas, who thankfully snapped the images that you're now looking at of what can only be described as a massive three-dimensional cube-shaped UFO, which in the very first image can be seen almost shooting out at a pretty fair rate of speed out of what looks like a massive black hole type portal, or opening up within the sky and surrounding clouds. The source states that this black portal or hole in the clouds appeared within a matter of seconds, which is initially what caught his eye and made him do a double take at the clouds as he left his office of employment for lunch at around 1 p.m. noon in El Paso. He said that it began to get very windy out, and he noticed a small portion of clouds begin to swirl and circle in on one another, forming this portal shape, at which point the center of the clouds became jet black. Now this is when the source decided to hurry up and pull out his phone for a picture, and at this point the source had not seen any UFOs and had simply wanted to image these anomalous cloud formations. But just as he snapped the first image, this massive looking cube-shaped UFO is caught on photograph, jetting out of this dark black wormhole looking manifestation and making its presence known. The source observed the craft, or entity, whatever this thing could be. He watched it move at a steady pace through the cloud cover, disappearing into the clouds and for a few short moments breaking back out once again, to mystify all those who might be gazing up from below from the events that are transpiring. Walter was able to snap about 7 more images in attempts to catch the object on its exit from one cloud to another, out of which he successfully caught 2 more images of the actual object being visible, or partially visible, just as it starts to come out of a break in the clouds, which you can see in this second image here. Now, I am personally at a loss for words when it comes to this UFO sighting, because this thing is mind-blowing. And not only do we not know what it is it a craft? Is it an entity from another dimension? Is it a probe sent here by a higher intelligence in another galaxy? Questions like these that come up from amazing UFO sightings caught on camera like this are why we do what we do. But not only do we have these three-dimensional cubes in these images, that, by the way, after some analysis, has what look to be intricate designs spanning its entire surface, but also the fact that in this sighting, and not hardly found in many others, is evidence of a portal, or a dimensional wormhole that gives us data and evidence as to how these alien craft move around, how they get here from wherever they came from. The very fact that this UFO arrived by jumping through a suddenly appearing black hole in the sky leads us to believe that this isn't man-made. Sorry guys, I know a few of you refuse to believe that any UFO isn't man-made, but I think we can safely rule out some army grunt punched behind the wheel of this thing. No, this thing looks far beyond our understanding. The third image that was taken, which you can see now, that is by far the best of the 3 images probably, because it captures this craft in its entirety. For the few brief moments that it came out of the clouds and was freely moving quietly through the air as our source watched in disbelief, before finally disappearing back into the clouds, never to be seen again. Well, not by this source at least, but do stay tuned because we have a second source who is about a mile down the road who also captured an image of this thing as it came towards her. And in a new email sent in to us while we were in the middle of researching this first sighting, a woman also from El Paso had captured an image of what she called a giant square ship of some kind. When we read this, alarm bells immediately went off, as you can imagine, and we knew that this was the same craft, now corroborated by 2 independent sources. The woman states that she was returning to an office complex where she works as an accountant for a local business, and as she got out of her vehicle, she noticed a square-shaped figure moving through the clouds, and at first glance she thought it was a balloon. As the dark object continued moving through the clouds, the detailing of the craft became much more visible, and in her own words, it became evident that whatever this thing was, it was not a small balloon, but a giant, solid thing. With designs around it and a faint magnetic oscillation type humming that seems to emulate from the craft as it came into view, according to this source, and then became faint as it headed back into the clouds and out of sight. Now this source here was able to snap one image, which she was lucky enough to get in the first place because this thing was moving through the clouds, it wasn't stopping, and she pulled out her phone and was able to snap a picture just in time as this craft was heading back into the clouds. And we have analyzed all of these images and brought out the detail of this extraordinary UFO for you guys to see here. This is not the first time that these giant, square, UFO type ships have been seen, and in fact, these craft, wherever they come from, many of them will cloak themselves among the clouds, or as clouds themselves. If you were an alien species and you wanted to surveil the surface of Earth, what would be one of the easiest places to hide your giant vehicles right in plain sight? The clouds. Another advantage of using the clouds for cover for these types of unknown craft is basically the fact that no one would believe you if you ran up and told them what you saw.
There's another one. Oh my god. Oh my god. Come here. Ah, 4. Come here.
אתה רואה?
רואה מה זה?
לא, לא, כולנו רואים את זה.
מה זה?
שיו!
יואו!
Pô, onde que tá agora, pô? Ah lá, ó. Ô, Rafa, tá... Ah, essa porra dessa bateria tá acabando, bicho. Caralho, tá descendo, pô!
What the hell is that thing? What is it?
Dad.
What is that?
Oh, there's one coming out! One coming out, look!
Yeah, I see that. Something coming down.
The Mexican Air Force has released a video that some of you are going to find difficult to believe. A journalist says it shows images of UFOs tracking a Mexican military plane. He says Mexico's defense secretary gave him the video, which was allegedly taken by the pilot during a patrol. The pilot says up to 16 lights were tracking his aircraft. The Mexican defense secretary says images like these have never been released to the public by the armed forces of any country.
If you flew on Air France from Nice to London on January 28, 1994, your captain says he saw a UFO 1,000 feet long just outside your window.
It seemed to be
a huge flying disc.
The now retired pilot is one of 14 men, mainly former government and military officials from 7 different countries, talking about their UFO experiences.
It disappeared in about 10 to 20 seconds.
This conference took place in Washington, and the cast of characters was almost strangely, well, conventional. One of the believers, former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington.
I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality.
During a visit to Phoenix, Symington described to me what he saw.
If you had been here 10 years ago and standing out here and looking up there at the lights and the view, you would have been astounded. You would have been amazed.
The so-called Phoenix Lights were seen by many people in 1997. Skeptics say they were military aircraft or flares, but not the former governor.
It was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
Lots of agreement on this panel. This retired Iranian Air Force pilot said he saw a UFO while flying.
It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter.
General Parviz Jafari says he tried to fire a missile, but much of his plane became inoperative.
All the instrument was fluctuating, the radio had garbled, even I couldn't have communication with my pilot in my back seat with operating the radar.
So none of your equipment worked, your missiles didn't work. Do you think it's because this was an alien from another world? You're sure of that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
This retired U.S. Air Force sergeant stationed in England said he walked up to a UFO that landed in a forest.
It maneuvered through the trees and shot off at an unbelievable rate of speed.
A man running for president just said he saw a UFO.
I did, and the rest of the account, well, it was unidentified flying object.
And so did a man who was president.
I and about 25 others saw something in the air that changed colors and was round and came.
Although Jimmy Carter says he doesn't think it was from another planet, most of these people differ on that point and want the FAA to investigate all these claims. But the FAA says that's not its job. We manage the aircraft that we're talking to. UFOs are called UFOs because they're unidentified, and we're not talking to them.
Yesterday in this hour, we told you about the mysterious lights that keep appearing over Lake Erie near Cleveland. Here is some home video of the lights that neighbors in the area say are unlike aircraft or helicopters that fly there. And last night, for the 8th night in a row, they said these lights were back, appearing around 7:30 p.m. and lasting about 2 hours. NASA has a lab in Cleveland called the Glenn Research Center. They test rockets and various aircraft, but say they haven't done any testing this week. A Pentagon official told me the U.S. military has not been testing anything recently in that area. And the FAA acknowledges the light pattern seems different from commercial flight paths in the area. So what on earth is going on?
Had a sighting from a commercial airline pilot who saw 2 UFOs, estimated as being almost a mile long. And this thing was actually tracked on radar. There was a primary radar return. Then a few years before that, we had a case with a UFO flying over 2 military bases in England, seen by numerous police and military witnesses. One of the Air Force officers described this thing as a vast triangular-shaped craft moving from a virtual hover to a speed several times that of a fast jet, just in seconds. And this is an Air Force officer with 8 years experience talking to me.
That orange object, look how beautiful. Whoa. Oh my God.
Oh, whoa. Oh, here they come. There are 2. Look at this, how gorgeous.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I'm looking with the night scopes. There's no smoke, there's no trails. These are not flares. And
oh my goodness.
Okay, let's welcome them here.
Oh, they're so beautiful.
They were waiting for us to arrive.
Whoa.
Jacques, please photograph. Yeah, all cameras should be filming. So connect to them in your consciousness and invite them here. These are the golden ones I talked about. Let's welcome their beings on board to join us in meditation. So open your heart chakra and send them the beauty of humanity. And if you can see what I'm doing, you can connect with your palms out like this and your third eye and your heart, making like a tetrahedron radiating our pureness and love towards them.
Bob Rosamond has the UFO Research, British UFO Research Association, had many reports over the years about sightings.
We have a substantial archive, actually. We have somewhere in the region of 12 to 15,000 case files going back as far as 1925. So it's quite a substantial amount of documentation, quite possibly more than the ministry itself has.
According to some recent studies, there are sightings of UFOs about every 10 minutes. Now, I realize some of those things, many of them are hoaxes, or swamp gas, or a flux of birds, or Venus, and all that. But let's just say some of them are real. It seems to be like the phenomena is burgeoning. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that the frequency is increasing, and as most people who studied this area realize, it's a difficult thing to study because of the confusion, the noise, the hoaxes, and you've got to somehow slice through all of that. But even when you do, you discover there's a core group of things that are not only real, they're classified. Part of the other thing you run into is there's a sector of that that never sees the light of day because of security. And one of the things, because I came out of that world, I spent a good 30 years of my executive career as in the classified community, and not only in the service, but in the intelligence community, and as a chief executive officer of 4 different publicly traded defense contractors. So I'm used to being in the deeply classified world for a lot of reasons. And the point, for reasons I can't go into, but the thing that startled me to discover was that the UFO area enjoys a security classification that's higher than our most sensitive warheads, the W-88 warheads. And so that's the mystery, is why are things like Roswell and other things like that, after over 60 years, still classified to this day. And you can't 2 presidents and 4 congressmen tried to pierce that and couldn't. The security that surrounds that area is astonishing. Why? Nobody knows, because it's classified.
I do hereby affirm
that I will tell the truth.
I will tell the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
To this committee today.
To this committee today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on, because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. And so after confirming the contents of the book with a retired United States Air Force general, I accepted the invitation of Victor Viggiani, who's over here somewhere, and his cohort Mike Bird to speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto. And I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally.
I, with my surgical team of medical specialists, performed 16 surgeries for the removal of foreign objects from those individuals who allege alien abduction. The individuals involved in this study all presented with no noted portal of entry for any of the objects that were removed. There was no visible scar formation, and there was no interruption of the integrity of the skin, even when examination was performed with a magnifying loupe, not only examining the area involved, but a large amount of the peripheral area. We used frequencies of ultraviolet light to detect fluorescence in the area of the object. About 60% presented with positive UV light fluorescence with color ranges from pink, green to yellow.
In June of 2001, President Bush came on scene on ABC News, and it was carried throughout the networks and in Popular Mechanics magazine. He had with him a general from the Air Force, and he was announcing that the general was going to be the head of a new military force called the Space Force. And they were going to build this force and also put a military base on the moon. Now, nobody questioned him on why, what was the purpose for that. But then September 11th comes around, the terrorist attack comes, this general is posted as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Space Force never comes about. The question I have still, why did he want to create a new military force for outer space unless there's a threat?
We have one. We have a space. We have a space force. It's in existence, and it's been written about extensively. It's there.
One more observation before I begin what I want to say, and that is that we spent quite a bit of time talking about the 66-year-old cadavers, and I was glad to have Linda this morning finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin, but after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology with them.
There are many pieces of evidence that indicate that this is known about, that there was an agency set up by President Truman shortly after the discovery of the crash site at Roswell in 1947, at the Majestic 12 group. And there's been clear testimony that I believe is credible, would be credible in a court of law, that this organization has, for various reasons, taken this issue out from under the oversight of our Congress, out from under the control of our executive branch, and has taken this into a realm of semi-private control. And what you'll notice is that as we come to the last panel of our week together here, the issue tends to turn more and more to that issue. What has happened? What has happened to our country when a national security state seems to have arisen to conceal certain types of information from our people, from our congressional representatives, even from some of our presidents?
John Podesta was the key advisor to President Clinton during the Rockefeller Initiative to have Clinton release all the files in the government hands regarding this phenomena. He was a noted X-Files buff. I think that President Obama is well aware there's an extraterrestrial presence. Admittedly, he was probably tipped off by John Podesta. But he can't do anything about it.
We're talking July 1947. This is what our government knew at that time. The Soviet Union was not going to be our friend. There was an iron curtain over Europe. They were building an atomic bomb. They had the hydrogen bomb secrets, as you could call them. They got them from us and our spies and their own scientists. They had their own German scientists, which they had captured.
Right, World War II, sure.
And many of them were dealing in the rocketry, and they were working on missiles, exactly like we were. And there was a substantial, I think, opinion within the high levels of the military in the United States that another war with the Soviet Union was not only likely, but probable. And obviously it would be nuclear. And so that would be the war to end all wars, finally. That's a pretty big burden to deal with. How are we going to prepare for a possible war? How can we prevent a nuclear war? We don't know. It's 1947. In the middle of that circumstance, they have extraterrestrials to deal with. They don't know where they're from, probably. They don't know what their agenda is. They have actual technology from at least one version of these ETs. They don't know what it represents, what could be done with that. So is anybody going to blame them for saying, look, until we have a better sense of the Soviet situation and a better sense of what this ET thing is about, we just can't just reveal this to the American public? This needs to be a national security matter, fully classified, until we can deal with this. That is not an unreasonable decision.
There are those who are really pushing for disclosure. In other words, they want the governments of the world just to come clean and admit that this phenomenon is real. What do you think about that? And you think this is anytime soon?
First of all, it is real. But secondly, I don't see disclosure in the classic sense happening for this reason. To disclose this dark presence that's been around literally for millennia would trip up the plans of too many world governments, whom I believe to be in league with these intruders. The Bible says that their business, that is the business of the intruders, is to be foul human government. And we find that in the Old Testament, the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece.
Does exactly that.
And we find it in the New Testament, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, interacting with world powers. Now, these world powers are not going to disclose their connection with dark forces because it's to their advantage to keep this all a secret.
My perspective is looking at the ancient text and the prophecies, that Jesus of Nazareth delivered, that I see, in the Apocalypse written by the Apostle John. And, there's a philosophy of history that runs through those texts. And, it kind of tells me what I should be looking for and what I should expect. Now, I don't see anything about benevolent space brothers coming to help me in my spiritual evolution in those predictions, but I do see a prediction of a deception that's unprecedented, that leads the whole world astray. Right. So I'm not saying, my religious belief structure, doesn't mention these beings, therefore they don't exist. That's not my argument. It's not an argument from silence. It's an argument from, what I do believe. And what I do believe tells me to expect this deceptive phenomenon to happen. I think that this alien mythos that's predominant in the culture offers the most explanatory scope for how that could happen.
What do you believe the source of the phenomena is? Who's behind this?
mean, being an ancient text guy, I have a tendency, I mean, even as a young ufologist, I always call it the Shining One, because that's how Lucifer is referred to in those texts. And when you see these things up close and when they're in full manifestation, the Shining One is exactly a great description of it. I mean, it's brightness that you can't describe. That type of.
There are crafts that are being seen everywhere. So where is this going? I mean, what is the end game here? What do you see happening, let's say, in the not too distant future?
I think that if we have to go by ancient texts, what they're saying is going to happen, what do we have out there that could change the paradigm so much that it could have the church folk and the very elect leave the churches?
Be deceived.
Yeah, the last big paradigm shift was Jesus. Let's face it, he changed the whole operation.
All right.
It has to be something that big, even bigger. The only thing we have sitting out there right now is the UFO alien stuff.
Is there anything so abhorrent, but yet known by a limited number of people in government, military, and intelligence? Limited could be a dozen, hundreds, even thousands. That should appropriately be withheld from the people of the world because it's just too hard to handle.
Could it be that the governments of the world are sort of in over their heads? In other words, they're dealing with these entities which are so much more powerful than they are, that they've lost control of really, of everything in some way.
L.A., I think there's more truth in that than probably either one of us knows. To have made a deal with the devil in the classic sense,
Literally,
is to find oneself in a trap. At first, it sounds like maybe you can win in this deal with the devil. Maybe you'll get something out of it that's worthwhile, and then later on you find out that there were parts of the deal you didn't know about at the beginning. And I think that the world governments, our government in particular, has gained a lot of technological savvy from reverse engineering. And we've read about this in I don't know how many books. But what was the price? The price was, I think, to give up certain control on a global basis. We don't know what that control involves, but it probably involves world economies, lines of force, power, human enslavement, and ultimately, in the plan of the Antichrist, who gains his power from on high, the control of the entire population.